So no brew day videos this time. I just wanted to try two beers side by side. This is a clone I brewed of Courage Russian Imperial Stout 9 years ago at this point. And this is a version that I rebrewed almost 2 years ago now. This beer has been my holiday tradition the last nearly decade. I left the beers at my parents' house, and every time I'd go visit them for Christmas, I would go in, grab one of them, and enjoy it while watching the fire crackle or sitting around the Christmas tree. And with those bottles running out, this is the second to last one, I thought it'd be fun to do it again. So I labeled them, and this time rather than just brewing 4 gallons I split with my friend James, I brewed 5 gallons that would be just for me. And I've date labeled the bottles. This is the 2017 bottle, even though we're just creeping into 2018. But I have bottles all the way up until 2050. So I'm going to be enjoying this for most of my lifetime. And so hopefully the beer isn't terrible. So let's just open these up and take a look at what we're dealing with. First, the original batch. And then the newer version. Obviously the newer one is just a little bit more carbonated. Head is a little bit nicer too. The original batch it's a little sort of foamy. You can actually see the bubbles have a little sheen to them almost. First thing to check though is aroma. Yeah, I mean just really big dark fruit. Caramelized plums, a little bit of leatheriness from the Brettanomyces, even though it was killed before it was bottled with a metabisulfite solution. Let's try the new one. Yeah, it's a lot fresher smelling. It is more direct with the roast, a little bit more fresh ground coffee. The bread is a little bit earthier, a little bit funkier. Yeah, that just has a much more aged out, rounded kind of nose to it. Wow, that's still terrific. It's got a real depth of flavor, coffee, chocolate. Definitely some notes that you might associate with the Belgian quad, some of the more figgy, plummy, caramelized sugar. Both of these have a little bit of dark candy syrup in them rather than the likely more traditional brewer's caramel that a English brewery would have used. Let's try the newer one in comparison. It's just a little bit more discordant. The Brett is sort of walking into that toasty, roasty kind of thing in a bit of an awkward way. Man, the original one just has such a more cohesive flavor to it. Even at that extended age, it does not have any big oxidative notes, no sherry or cardboard or anything like that. The younger one does taste younger. I'm hoping that it migrates to be more like its older sibling with time, but no way to tell until we give it a few more years. Other than the considerable age difference, the biggest difference is process and recipe-wise between these two. The older one had Y yeast Brettanomyces anomalous, which has been discontinued. When I was rebrewing this, I tried to culture up an old bottle I had that had dregs from Y yeast anomalous. but they just didn't start up, and so I ended up going with the White Labs Brettanomyces clausenii. Otherwise, this one had just a little bit more brown malt to it. After I'd brewed this one, Ron Pattinson had sent me over a Barclay's Imperial Brown Stout recipe sheet from the 1930s, and the newer version I did was a little bit more in that direction, trying to hold a little bit closer to the traditional version. Barclays was what Courage eventually turned into. They're both interesting beers, but man, hands down, that old version. A little more caramel, a little more sweetness, a little less aggressive, assertive, obvious Brett funkiness, a little less carbonation. This one, I wouldn't call it over-carbonated, but for a big dark beer, I don't need much. I don't need any sort of spritziness to cut through that big, sweet, dark finish. But we'll see. I mean, I have a hard time remembering exactly what this one was like. I have old tasting notes that I can go back and reference, but I don't think it's actually changed that much. So I'll be interested to see just how much the new version changes over the next 10 or 20 or 30 years, unless it keeps getting more and more carbonated, in which case I will probably be opening those bottles sooner rather than later. Thanks for coming down into my basement, seeing these beers. Hopefully it inspires you to try a project like this and just see how long well-stored, well-brewed beers can last, particularly when they are strong, dark, they have some wild yeast component, or in this case, metabisulfite, which is a fantastic oxygen scavenger more frequently associated with red wine. Well, until the next one, cheers.